Michael Saylor went on stage this past weekend at BTC Prague and predicted Bitcoin to hit $8 million per coin. This clip was only released 2 hours ago, but luckily I had some boots on the ground. So Luke and I broke down the math before this. But before Luke and I break down this math, we are going to watch the clip here. So Luke, welcome to the stage, man. And let's tune into this clip.
I'm absolutely pumped. Let's listen to the Giga Chat himself.
And when I first started buying Bitcoin, I was buying it at $9,500. But that's okay. I'll buy it at $95,000. And then I'll be buying it at $950,000. And when it gets to $950,000, there'll be some whiny person, a talking head on television, saying it looks overbought right now. It looks a little bit heated. We think it's going to trade down to 700,000. And they'll miss it. It'll go to 8 million. And they'll buy it at 8 million. And they will get Bitcoin at the price they deserve. And when I first started buying Bitcoin, I was buying it at 9,000.
How spicy did you think that was, Brandon?
Oh, it was absolutely spicy, man. I mean, to get on stage like that and just go for it, say, hey, I got Bitcoin at the price I deserve. Michael Saylor, one of the biggest whales there is. He's been buying MicroStrategy, has been buying, and he's been deploying and utilizing the traditional finance tools that is available for a publicly traded company like MicroStrategy to keep on buying. And he keeps saying, hey, no matter what the price is, I'm going to keep buying it as it goes up and up and up and up, even to $8 million. And he said, the FUD that they've been spreading since the beginning of Bitcoin's existence in 2009 is going to keep going up. So I think it's absolutely incredible that he, as a Bitcoiner, already sees this. He sees the writing on the wall, and he sees all the FUD that they've been spreading. So, Luke, what do you think about it?
I think it's absolutely massive. I think there's a couple of important nuggets that was kind of hidden inside that speech, okay? He's kind of saying, look, he's saying all your models are going to be destroyed, okay? He actually, in that same speech that he gave at BTC Prague this week, he actually said, what is going to happen when Godzilla walks into the room? Bitcoin is Godzilla. It is going to break all of your models. And everybody who are these, models maximalists and, power law maximalists and stock to flow maximalists, they were all very offended this week after Michael Saylor's speech. I was watching all of the comments, having a little bit of a chuckle on Twitter, watching these model maximalists freak out a little bit. Because Michael Saylor said, okay, Bitcoin's going to be at $950,000. I'm going to be buying Bitcoin. I'm going to be buying it at $9,500, $95,000, and $950,000. But I'm going to be buying, and you are going to hear these whiny mainstream media talking heads saying, oh, Bitcoin looks a little bit overbought. It's due for a correction of $700,000. And the Giga Chat said it. Bitcoin's going to rip to 8 million. So what I think is the nugget hidden inside that comment is obviously he thinks that all of these models are going to break. Okay. And they could break sooner. Okay. Michael was, again, just using examples with numbers. He wasn't making an exact prediction saying that this is going to happen at $850,000 per Bitcoin. But I think it could happen at $400,000 a Bitcoin. That kind of scenario could happen this cycle. Now, I'm not saying Bitcoin's going to go to $8 million this cycle, but what I am saying is that Bitcoin could break the power law model this cycle. Okay, Bitcoin could get to $300,000, $400,000 per coin. It's one or two standard deviations above the, power law model, and a lot of people are going to take profits. They're going to sell the Bitcoin. They're going to listen to the whiny mainstream media talking heads saying, oh, Bitcoin's a bit overbought at $400,000. We think it's going to come back to $300,000. Maybe it has a 5% correction and it rips to $1 million. Okay, so I think this hypothetical scenario Michael talked about is certainly a possibility. What do you think, Brandon?
100%. I mean, it's not just a possibility. I think, at this point, whether or not, what do you believe about fiat? It's going to keep going up, right? I mean, the $8 million of coin, it's just a matter of time. Who knows when that's exactly going to occur? But I mean, it's going to keep ripping up. What we don't have priced in is more institutions adopting it, right? More institutions, more Michael Saylors popping up, right? I mean, we've had Michael Saylor, the only billionaire, to really dig his heels down and start buying Bitcoin at an unbelievable pace, and even implementing it in his own MicroStrategy strategies, right? It's his own reserves. We talked about it last live stream, Luke, where we had 3 different companies already implement that, and we saw their stock prices rise like crazy. And I mentioned it here earlier that MicroStrategy is continuing to utilize the traditional financial tools in order to keep buying Bitcoin, right? They're proposing now $500 million of more convertible notes to boost their Bitcoin stash. And we all know Michael Saylor is not selling, man. He's going to go down, and he's even said like he's going to take some of his Bitcoin to the grave with him, right? As like a charitable donation to the network. So, he doesn't have any kids. He's thinking about his legacy. He keeps buying Bitcoin, and he keeps utilizing these traditional financial tools to boost his stack. I mean, it's unbelievable how much conviction this guy has and how much he's digging his heels in. So, Luke, what do you think about MicroStrategy and their new, their new purchase, their new way of getting more and more Bitcoin on that balance sheet?
Yeah, so I find it fascinating. I'm not sure whether you can bring it up or not, but I've got an image that I talked about on an earlier live stream earlier today. And I thought, hey, let's talk about it in this one if we can find it. But it's actually talking about Michael Saylor's 7-step flywheel effect. Okay, so it is actually, I think that what he's going to continue doing is continuing to buy Bitcoin, because when he buys Bitcoin, his stock price goes up. And it just continues to kind of have this self-perpetuating feedback loop, okay, which is really, really interesting. So I don't think he's going to stop. I don't think he's going to slow down. But maybe this is, okay, so here it is. You've got the MicroStrategy's reflexive flywheel effect, okay? Have you seen this chart before, Brandon?
No, I mean, outside of you tweeting it, I didn't see this before we came on here, but it makes a ton of sense of what he's doing. I'll let you break it down here for you, or for us here, since you were just talking about it here earlier.
Yeah, so I can't take credit for it. And I've said this in 2 live streams today. I've said it in 1 live stream anyway. I can't take credit for this chart. But essentially, what it's showing you is that whenever MSTR issues debt to buy Bitcoin, BTC price increases. That's step number 2. BTC price increases. But so does MicroStrategy market cap. Naturally, if they've got Bitcoin and the price of Bitcoin goes up, their balance sheet's going to increase in value. Step number 3, MSTR market cap increases. And now this is interesting because this means that MicroStrategy's market cap in the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ will also increase. That's step number 3. Step number 4. Then MSTR says, okay, we've got a bigger market cap. Why don't we issue more equity to buy Bitcoin? That's step number 4. Guess what happens? BTC increases. MSTR market cap increases. And then the weight in the indices increases again. So it's just this big feedback loop that just continues to feed on itself. Now, what I think is interesting is that other companies are starting to recognize this. You mentioned it earlier. Metaplanet, DeFi Technologies, all of these publicly traded companies in 2024 look to have maybe started to stumble upon MicroStrategy's 7-step feedback loop. Okay, it's very, very interesting. And we also obviously have Semler Scientific. That's the big company in America that we haven't mentioned with a $223 million market cap, who is going to come out and issue $150 million of their own stock to buy Bitcoin. This is absolutely massive. Okay, so it's really, really big. Now, what do you think, Brandon? Do you think it's nearly, well, I want you to answer this question from Lisa first before we get into the maths.
Yeah, I mean, I agree though, that they would, if the comment is, if these model mathematicians believed in the power law, they would stop speaking and they would stop whining and crying. And I agree. I think at the end of the day, a lot of these models are, they're good and they're helpful, right? But they're also meant to be broken, right? They're not going to be, perfect, nailing it 100% of the time. So, I think the power law is something that can be useful, but I think that, the 7-step flywheel that is being implemented all over in different companies, you listed them, right? Semler Scientific, at Metaplanet, and all these other ones. I think it's just a matter of a time before it becomes norm, right? It becomes norm for all these companies to start using Bitcoin as the reserve treasury, as it only makes sense, right? I mean, I was even listening to an interview with Michael Saylor on what Bitcoin did, where, with Peter McCormack, where he was saying even that MicroStrategy was nearly a zombie company before they implemented this strategy. So I think it's just a matter of a time before we get more and more companies onto this. But let's dive into the math a little bit here, Luke, about what we're seeing as to how Michael Saylor is coming up with these numbers, right? I mean, we were talking about it a little bit pre-show that in order to get to this $8 million, we need the current market cap to go over 150 times what it already is. That would include a 12,000% increase, which sounds absolutely crazy. But tell me, how do you think that this makes sense?
Yeah, it does sound crazy, doesn't it? And like a lot of people think, okay, to see an $8 million Bitcoin, that means that we have to get $168 trillion of inflows into Bitcoin. So Brandon and I ran the maths literally minutes before getting on this live stream for you guys, just double checking our maths. And we found that you need a $168 trillion market cap to get an $8 million Bitcoin. So this is what people get wrong. They assume that we need $168 trillion of new capital to flow into Bitcoin to get us to that $8 million per coin price target or price potential that Michael's talking about. But this forgets about the Bitcoin multiplier effect. So we know that for every $1 that flows into Bitcoin today, it actually pushes the market cap up for Bitcoin by 4. Okay, so $1 in equals $4 up for the market cap. So when you run the numbers and the math, as we mentioned in the title of today's video, we only actually need to see $62 trillion of inflows into Bitcoin. You use that 4x multiplier effect, and then that takes you to that $168 trillion market cap. So $62 trillion, it's not a massive amount of money. That's about 7% of the world's wealth. We know that there's around $800 to $900 trillion worth of money in the world, and we need less than 10% of that. So 7% of that to flow into Bitcoin to push it to that $8 million price tag that Mike was talking about. What do you think about the maths, Brandon?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it makes a ton of sense, right? I mean, it's a little bit simpler than I think, or than we're breaking it down here, and it's a little bit more realistic. I mean, we've had the Bitcoin spot ETFs inflows now for since about January, only half a year. We've already seen $15 billion inflowed in that in just 1 year. So, or in half a year. So I think like that's going to continue. We've seen a lot of FOMO come in, and those big giant weeks where we see Bitcoin's price run up a little bit, you see the inflows massively come in that day. So who knows what's going to happen when all of these inflows come in, when we see other nation states start to adopt it, and when we see other institutions start to adopt it as well. I think it's only a matter of time. And I think that, it's all coming to fruition here, especially because of all the vehicles that we have in order to purchase and hold Bitcoin, right? I mean, I think there's a lot of things, more accessibility to everybody across the globe, including, all those traditional finance tools. And, I mean, the US, let's be blunt about it. I mean, they've got a lot of money to be thrown around, a lot of investment money, a lot of investment dollars. Hedge funds are now starting to come around to it. I was even talking to a buddy at the gym the other day who is a money manager, and he doesn't even know anything about Bitcoin. So I think we're still early. But I think it's only a matter of time for us to, kind of see this run up happen. I think, a lot of people still don't know who Michael Saylor is. A lot of people are still figuring all this stuff out and kind of hearing about it. I think it's just more and more touch points that come along, and only a matter of time until we get this run up. Luke, you got any final words for us or anything like that before we kind of get into what are the best ways to store your Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, no final thoughts really jump out to me. I think everybody's short Bitcoin. I think you nailed it. We're still incredibly early. As we're probably going to mention before we wrap this video up, like we got presidents of some of the biggest countries around the world quietly embracing Bitcoin. And we do have a little bit of a surprise for the audience that we're going to say for the very, very end of today's video. We're not going to tell you what that surprise is yet, but I think like all of this talk about the Bitcoin ETFs, I think it should all teach us and remind us the importance of what this Bitcoin revolution is. Okay. That is actually holding your own Bitcoin. That is actually having no counterparty risk. That is actually taking self-custody of your Bitcoin. It's having your own Bitcoin in your own wallet, so you can actually transfer that to other people on the Bitcoin network. Okay, so I think that's why Brandon and myself are so bullish about taking self-custody of your Bitcoin. What do you think are some of their best options, Brandon? Obviously, we only like Bitcoin only hardware wallets, but what have you got on the screen?
Yeah, so I've got the Foundation Passport. I think it's the best and it's the easiest. You could set all this up in like 60 seconds to get your Bitcoin off of an exchange and utilize this to help support yourself and get financially free. You don't need any counterparty risk. You don't have to worry about these ETFs actually purchasing your Bitcoin or giving you paper Bitcoin. You could purchase it, and even if it's a little intimidating, you can utilize their concierge service as well to get that Bitcoin off an exchange. They've got a real easy to use app. I've actually timed myself doing it. It takes only about 60 seconds. And then to store your seed phrase, you can buy a punch plate from Stampseed here and utilize promo code Green Candle for all of it. You'll get $10 off of the foundation at foundation.xyz. And then you use promo code Green Candle here, you'll get 15% off. You could get anything from a 24 to their new 12 word seed phrase, the Shamir and the Sharding. So if you want to utilize the 12 word seed phrase, you could do that and do it super easily as well. And last but not least, man, I mean, you can orange pill your friends and family with the Bitcoin trading cards. I've got a lot of them sitting right here. They've got a lot of great topics going on. You can go to BTC-TC and you can utilize that. You can go and get some of the Genesis packs where they got some cool things called about the traditional financial tools to help teach you about that. We got the gold standard, and they've even got like cool packs of people, right? I mean, we have the BitBlock Boom pack here. I've got Lawrence Lepard, friend of the show, friend of the program. It's a little reflective too. I've had him on the show twice. I've even got a card of Lisa Howe, who I'm going to be interviewing here soon. So that's an interview coming up. So I'll be on the lookout for that. And Luke, what you got for us on that, man?
You know, it's funny. BTC trading cards don't sponsor my pod, and I've even got a pack of them. They're just a great product. They're super cool. I've got a honey badger here. What else have I got here? This looks like a little volcano in El Salvador mining Bitcoins. I think they're super cool. I'm super bullish on Bitcoin physical products. I think physical products, are the way to orange pill the masses. So again, take self-custody of Bitcoin, put your self-custody on steel. If you want to educate the masses, BTC trading cards are a nice little physical alternative. But we have that little bit of a special announcement for the listeners about something that just happened literally an hour ago.
Yeah, 100%. We just dropped the latest State of Bitcoin podcast with Pierre Rochard, where we talk about Trump's Bitcoin strategy, what's going on, some legal action that he had to deal with, and much, much more. So tune into that. It's right there on it's right here on the on my YouTube channel. And you guys can tune in and jump onto that too. So be sure to check that out. Pierre Rochard's an absolute amazing guest. And we dive into what his opinion is on Trump and like how Bitcoin is actually getting on the ballot here in the United States. So Luke, any final words for us before we wrap this up?
Yeah, everyone should definitely check that out. Pierre Rochard's got 50,000 followers on Twitter, but I actually think he's criminally under-followed. I actually think he's far more insightful than that. He's been around Bitcoin for a very, very, very long time, over a decade, okay? So definitely go check out that interview. It's, chock full of wisdom. But aside from that, I've got nothing. I think we've covered a lot of bases today, Brandon. I think that's a great place to wrap it.
Awesome stuff. Well, thanks so much, Luke, and thanks everybody for tuning in.